In this video, I'm going to look at some break-even calculations. This is a carry-on from the last video where I covered the theory of break-even analysis and I did a few examples. In this video, I'm going to carry on with a few examples and we're going to do a few calculations that are good preparation for your upcoming tests. What you are required to do in this example is construct a table to do certain calculations. This is a break-even analysis table and we're going to calculate where this business breaks even with a whole lot of other calculations as well. So let's have a look. All Gold manufactures tomato sauce. All Gold's total fixed costs amount to 65,000 per annum. So what we can do is we can go fill in the fixed cost. FC stands for fixed cost, 65,000. It doesn't matter how many products are produced or sold, the fixed cost remains the same, 65,000 Rand per annum. So we go and fill in the fixed cost, 65,000 Rand per annum. Each bottle of tomato sauce sells for 15 Rand. There's another given. So the price, each bottle sells for 15 Rand. It doesn't matter what quantity is produced or sold. Each bottle of tomato sauce sells for 15 Rand. Each bottle of tomato sauce also consists of ingredients, 2 Rand, as well as a glass bottle costing 50 cents. Now if you add the two together, 2 Rand plus 50 cents is 2 Rand 50. Now these variable costs will differ when it comes to how much quantity is produced or sold. Calculate the annual quantity of bottles of tomato sauce and amount in rands that All Gold must sell to break even by constructing a break-even table. Use quantities ranging from 4,000 to 6,000 in multiples of 400. So they say use quantities from 4,000 to 6,000, increasing in multiples of 400. So 4,000 plus 400 is 4,400. 4,400 plus 400 is 4,800 until 6,000. Now these are the given variables from this written paragraph above, question 3. Now we're required to calculate total variable cost, and total variable cost is variable cost, 2 Rand 50, multiplied by quantity. The total cost is equal to fixed cost plus what we calculate in total variable cost. The income that we're going to get is price multiplied by quantity. So price multiplied by quantity will give you the sales figure, income. And the profit is sales less the total costs. So the income from sales less the total costs is going to give you the profit. And this is the completed table. So we've got price, quantity, fixed cost, variable cost, total variable cost was variable cost times by quantity, in this case is equal to 10,000. Total cost is equal to fixed cost plus total variable cost, so 65,000 plus 10,000 is equal to 70,000. The income is price times by quantity of 4,000 is equal to 60,000. And what is the profit or loss? In this case here, the cost of 75,000, the total cost, is greater than the sales income. Therefore, the expenses are greater than the income, and there's a loss. That's why it's minus 15,000. But as more products, bottles of tomato sauce are sold, the loss gets smaller. More are sold, and the loss gets smaller. And then at a quantity of 5,200 units that are sold, we have got no profit or no loss, because total cost is equal to total sales income, and that is the break-even point. So the break-even quantity is 5,200. The break-even sales or income is 78,000. The break-even cost is 78,000. That's when there's no profit or loss. It's the break-even point. So you can get asked the question to complete the table. And if you know the headings and you've practiced once or twice, it's quite easy to complete this table and determine the break-even quantity and the break-even sales amount. So the break-even quantity is 5,200 units, and the break-even sales amount is equal to 78,000. So that is the first question or calculation on break-even, drawing up a table to determine the break-even quantity and the break-even sales amount. Let's look at the next example. It says, consider the following contribution statement of comprehensive income. So we're given the sales figure in rands, we're given the variable costs, we're given the contribution, fixed costs, and the net profit. So the sales income, if we want to determine the selling price per unit, we could say 1.8 million divided by the number of units, which is 30,000, is equal to 60. Right, just so while I'm thinking about that, the selling price per unit to get to 1.8 million rand in income is 60 rand. There are variable costs and there's the contribution. Also, while I'm thinking about it, what is the contribution per unit? All I need to do is take that 1,050,000, divide by the number of units, which is 30,000, and that is going to equal to 35. So that is the contribution per unit, and also the price per unit sold is equal to 60. So in 5.1, you're asked to calculate the contribution ratio. And the formula to calculate the contribution ratio is the total contribution in rands. So we take the total contribution in rands, 1,050,000, divided by sales in rands. And the sales in rands is 1.8 million. So divided by 1.8 million. And a ratio or percentage, you want a percentage, you multiply by 100. I would call this the contribution percentage. But the contribution ratio, they're looking for the percentage of total contribution in rands over sales in rands multiplied by 100. They're the amounts. I showed you how to get them from the information above, and the answer is rounded off to 2 decimal places. 58.33% of sales is the contribution ratio. The next calculation we need to do is the break even in units. So we need to calculate the quantity of units at the point of breaking even, where no profit or loss is made, and what is the sales income at that point as well in rands. So we're doing 5.2. Here's our information. We want to know the break even in units and what is that rand value at that point. And if we look at the formulas, just clean this up a bit. We're given these formulas. Break even units is equal to the fixed cost divided by the contribution per unit. So break even units is equal to the fixed cost, which is 700,000, divided by the contribution per unit. Now the contribution per unit is 1,050,000 divided by the number of units, which is 30,000, and that will give you 35 Rand. That is the contribution per unit. The total contribution divided by the number of units gives the contribution per unit. And the fixed cost of 700,000 divided by the contribution per unit is equal to 20,000 units. That is the quantity at break even, the number of units that need to be sold in order to break even. Now, what is the Rand value? It's break even sales. So break even units multiplied by price. We've just calculated at break even there are 20,000 units. And what is the price? Where did we get that 60 from? We said 1.8 million divided by 30,000 is equal to 60. So the break even sales amount is 20,000 multiplied by the price, 20,000 units, multiplied the price per unit, and that is equal to 1.2 million. So at the break even point, 20,000 units are sold for in total 1.2 million. So if I did ask you the question, what are the total costs at break even? If you're breaking even, the total cost will also equal 1.2 million, because there is no profit and there is no loss. You break even. So that's calculating break even units and the break even sales value at break even. 5.3 says calculate the margin of safety in units, and once you've calculated the units, what is the Rand value of the margin of safety? And if we look at the formula for margin of safety, it's the sales in units 30,000 less the break-even units that we just calculated, and the break-even units were 20,000 from the previous slide. So the margin of safety in units is the total units to be sold. We always make the assumption that all the units are going to be sold, and we subtract the break-even units that we just calculated, and therefore the margin of safety is 10,000 units. What is the margin of safety in rands? We take the number of units that we just calculated, the margin of safety units, and we multiply by the selling price of 60 Rand, and that's 600,000. Remember to get the 60 Rand selling price per unit, we take the total sales amount divided by 30,000, and that is equal to 60, which is the selling price. So here we have the margin of safety in units, and then we also have the margin of safety, the Rand value of the margin of safety. In this example, let's have a look what's required. They say Bosch Limited manufactures a single product which sells for 2,000 Rand per unit. Selling price 2,000 Rand per unit. Variable costs are 1,200. So what is the contribution per unit? 2,000 minus 1,200 is the contribution per unit. There are fixed costs of 600,000, and during the month 930 units were sold. So they say calculate the break-even in units and rands. The break-even in units is the fixed cost of 600,000 divided by the contribution per unit, which was 2,000 minus 1,200. So the break-even units is the fixed cost divided by the contribution per unit. There's the fixed cost that's given to us, 600,000. And what is the contribution per unit? Per unit, selling price 2,000, variable cost 1,200. So it's 600,000 if there was another step here, divided by 800, and that is equal to 750 units. Then the next part of this question was calculate the break-even sales, and the break-even sales is the break-even units multiplied by the price. We've just calculated the units, 750, and the selling price is 2,000. So what is the break-even sales? 750 times by 2,000 is 1.5 million. There we go. So we calculated the break-even units and the break-even sales. The next calculation we're required to do is the margin of safety, once again in units and rands. And the margin of safety is the sales in units, the maximum sales in units, minus the units at the break-even point. In this example, they say 930 units will be sold, and we have just calculated the break-even in units, which were 750. So the margin of safety in units is 180. 930 minus the 750, which is the point of break even, the number of units sold at break even. So the margin of safety is 180 units. And if we want the margin of safety in rands, we multiply by the selling price. They give us the selling price there, 2,000. The margin of safety was 180 units multiplied by 2,000. So the margin of safety in rands is 360,000. All this work just takes a little bit of practice. The last thing we need to calculate is the contribution margin. And the contribution ratio or contribution margin is shown as a percentage, so we need to multiply by 100. So it is the total contribution in rands divided by the sales in rands. There we go. The contribution ratio is the total contribution in rands. So in order to calculate the total contribution in rands, we have 800 multiplied by the number of units that were sold. We need to establish where did that 800 come from, and it was 2,000, the selling price per unit, less 1,200, which is the variable cost per unit, and that will give us the contribution per unit. The contribution per unit is 800. So to get the total contribution, we've got now the contribution per unit. We need to multiply by the number of units sold, and they tell us it's 930. Then we need to divide by the sales in rands. And they say the selling price is 2,000. And how many units were sold? 930. So 2,000 times by 930. So there we got the contribution per unit multiplied by the number of units sold over the selling price times by the number of units sold multiplied by 100. And that will give you 40% of sales is the contribution ratio. So that's the contribution ratio, 40% of sales. And that brings us to the end of this video. I've done a few calculations on break even. Here we did the break even in units and rands, the margin of safety in units and rands, the contribution margin. What this takes is just a little bit of practice. If you go and watch this video a few times, you will become masters of this calculation. Chat soon. Cheers.